Recently, I shot an ad for Trees and Camo, and their only request was to have it raining in the video. I'm going to show you how we achieved the rain, what gear we used, and then break down 3 lighting setups for you, so let's get into it. Okay, so here we are at Akron Studio Rentals. They have a 42-foot cyc wall with lights in the ceiling that are all aperture novas, and then everything is controlled with an iPad that's connected to Sidus Link. For this first shot, I wanted to build tension and not reveal the clothing right away. So what I had imagined was somebody walking in the dark and only being illuminated by lightning strikes. And since my model wasn't actually a model, I brought an under-desk treadmill, and we placed that there for him to just walk on and film him walking towards the camera instead of trying to have him hit a bunch of different poses that he might not have been comfortable with. For gear, I'm shooting on the Sony FX6 and also an FX3, but for this shot, we're using the FX6 with the 24-70 G Master Mark II. I used this because we definitely didn't have enough budget to hire a first AC, so I wanted to use really good autofocus, and the lenses are really sharp, and they have really accurate colors, which is something that's super important whenever you're shooting a product that's going to be sold online. You want the products that are on the website to look exactly like they look like when they show up at your doorstep. Because I wanted a cooler color temperature, I shot at 4600, and we shot this scene at 24 frames per second. For the lighting, this one was probably actually the most simple. All we did was kill all the house lights, put a 300D behind him off to the left, another 300D off behind him to the right, both with the reflector attachment on them. In a perfect world, I would have had a spotlight on there to control the light even more, but the reflectors did the job in this scenario. And then we set each of the 300D to the paparazzi effect, which is basically this just like flashing strobe as if somebody was taking pictures. And we let these run for a little bit, and I waited until they kind of synced up to where one was flashing from the left and then one was flashing from the right, and kind of just edging him out as he was walking towards the camera. Let this run for a little bit, and then once I felt like I had enough footage, moved on to the next scene. This scene is technically the ending scene, but we knew things would get messy after the rain, so we shot it out of order. I wanted to lean into this blue look that I love, and I feel like it replicates an emotion that is often associated with rain. So we killed off all of the lights except for the backstrip that illuminates the cyc wall, and set them to this blue color with Sidus Link, and then just brought the brightness down to my liking. And this is cool because it created this blue gradient going down the wall, and then left my subject silhouetted because he was far enough away from the lights that it wasn't spilling onto him. So after we had that set up, we used the 600D with the spotlight attachment and used the cutters to make just basically a thin strip of light. And I had my gaffer pan the light to the left and to the right. And my intention with this was to just create this flash across him that would illuminate the clothes, and you could see them for a brief amount of time. And I did this because I wanted this to tie into the beginning of the video. And this is something that I try to do often in my edits, is have something that kind of like, starts off, brings you in, and then the ending is similar. And this helps bring the viewer full circle. When planning out the rain shots, I used one of my favorite resources, which is FrameSet. And I've been using FrameSet for a year now, and it's definitely one of my favorite things to use when I'm prepping for a shoot. There's so many different ways you can search for things. Like you can search by color, you can search by text, or once you find an image that you like, there's a similar search function, which brings up a bunch of images that kind of have the same look or mood that you're going for. So I went on to FrameSet and I typed in rain, and I found some really cool ads that had rain incorporated them and saved them to a set. And this is super helpful when building out a pitch deck, because you can show your director or your client proof of concept and they could see exactly what you had in mind. If you're interested in trying out FrameSet, I have a link in my description with a 10% off discount code. So definitely try it out. Something to note about when you're shooting rain or you want to see water falling in general is that it has to be backlit. If it's not backlit, it's like barely going to show up on camera. So we essentially kept the same setup with the 300Ds in the back, but now we added a key. And for this key, we got a little crafty. I had the 600D with the spotlight attachment on it again. And there's a giant chimera in there but it didn't have any lights in it at the time because they've been using it for photo. So what I did was took the spotlight and shaped a giant rectangle and shot it up into the camera. And what this did is create a giant top-down light. And this is one of my favorite ways to light a product shoot because it gives you a different look other than just, your typical 3-point lighting setup. For the rain, this was really just done with a garden hose that we ran over and had it set to the shower setting. We tried a couple different setups. We tried rigging this up to a C-stand with the trigger basically clamped down and then had it pointed at our subject, but this kind of just overcomplicated things. So ultimately, I just had Tony stand on a white box that they usually use for product shoots and kind of shoot it up into the air. That way it would spread out and fall down over a bigger radius. Another thing to note about shooting rain or water is that you need really fast frame rates to have rain falling slow. And a lot of times, like 120 doesn't even look slow enough, but that's all the FX6 can do in 4K. Because we were shooting 120, this meant that we needed a lot more light. And we didn't have anything like a 1200D at our disposal, so I switched the camera to 12,800. And something I've been trying to incorporate lately is using an exposure compensation LUT. And this is basically a LUT that helps you make sure you're recording a brighter image that you're going to bring down in post. Because if you record a brighter image and then you bring it down in post, you'll get cleaner shadows and less noise. So here I'm using a half-stop exposure compensation LUT. And what this is doing is helping me view an image that in post I'm going to bring down by a half a stop just to get a touch cleaner shadows rather than just looking at the monitor and saying, oh, this looks good. So instead of looking at the monitor and saying, oh, that looks good, what you're actually doing is recording a brighter image than what the monitor shows. And this is with the intent to bring it down in post to help you get cleaner shadows. That's all for this week's breakdown. Hopefully you learned something. And if there's any other topics that you'd like me to cover in the next one, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about something you'd like me to touch on. And I actually have some really special lenses I'm getting within the next couple weeks. So I'm really excited to share with you guys the footage that I get from those. But for now, that's all, and I'll see you in the next one.